two year anniversary of me finishing second and not first, which is awful. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, January 11th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. 8-game slate. That's the big one for this week. Very manageable. Unfortunately for us, lots of giant Q tags hanging in the balance. Some back-to-backs that make this complicated. So we're going to do our best for this morning. Make sure you're tuning in later today for Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. That one will give us a little bit more information. But before we start, like button, subscribe, notification bell. Adam, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad yesterday is over.
You and me both. Did not go well for me at all. I mean, it's just from the jump. The moment I even turned on the first game, I knew that I was in deep trouble. Lots of Sadiq Bey, lots of Kevin Knox. They both got more minutes than I projected them for and were somehow worse than that. It was just a disaster. I didn't have a lot of Jimmy Butler. His stat line was incredibly frustrating to see, including going 20 of 20 from the line and getting a ton of... It was 23 of 23?
Yeah.
The last I saw it was 20 of 20. I know they went 40 of 40 as a team.
Yeah. And so I ended up having a lot of Jimmy Butler, which I hadn't really planned on, but I ended up, getting there. So it was fine. But I saw his stat line. Like, I saw what he was doing, and I was like, man, I guess I really missed on, like, my Jimmy Butler projection. And then I saw his stat line, and it was just like, I mean, this is just stupid. Like, not only did he make 23 of 23 free throws, he also had, 5 or 6 combined steals and blocks?
7. Yeah. So, like, especially on FanDuel, if you don't have the 21 stocks and the 23 free throw, like, I didn't have a lot, and it came back to bite me. I certainly didn't expect Dwayne Dedmon to get the gate for tossing a massage gun onto the floor.
I certainly didn't expect Orlando Robinson to bust while the Dwayne Dedmon got ejected and hasn't played no minutes.
I had a ton, like, that game is just totally weird. The Pistons game went terribly for me. I had a lot of Kawhi at one point. He ended up being chalk. Didn't end up with a lot of him once we got through the late swap of Shamet. I had a ton of Luka, which was okay, but I would have rather had the Kawhi and additional salary for everything. Luka was average. I hated yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he did on FanDuel. He ended up with like 73 on DraftKings. But
he had 69-7 at 12-4. So, like, he was not essential by any means.
Right.
Not after Mitchell, not after Kawhi. Like, we say it a lot. This 9K range has the ability to get up there, unless you get Luka into the 80s or something where it becomes a necessity.
Was he in the winning line? I mean, with all the value yesterday, I feel like he probably still needed.
I don't think he was.
Oh, really?
I'm almost positive he wasn't, but let me just look at it quickly. Of course, I'm not logged in Fantasy Cruncher and Firefox.
Yeah,
I'm like 99% sure he wasn't.
Okay. Yeah, I was impressed because I was 5 of my 6 highest owned guys were Miami guys, but my 2 highest were Robinson and Highsmith. So I was really impressed that I got a 7-man rotation and 24 minutes apiece from my 2 highest guys.
What day is this? That's not yesterday.
It's Wednesday.
What? Did that still not like pay out correctly on FanDuel? No, still didn't. Still looks listed in the live category. I was like, what is going on? Shout out to T McBee, by the way, got second on FanDuel last night.
Oh, nice.
And by enough that you don't feel bad for getting second, and 3.5 fantasy points or something. So
you're just mad that person entered the lineup.
Something's going on with FanDuel where it's like still stuck in live, and I can't even see what the winning lineup was. I clicked on it and I'm just getting basically spinning wheel nonsense. Oh, T McBee is in chat. So hi to you. Oddly enough, lineup study is going to give me the ability to look at this lineup. So winning lineup was Mitchell, Oladipo, Dwayne Washington, Strus, Leonard, Bridges, Saric, Butler, Nurkic. So no Luka. Not that having him would have been a problem, but
yeah.
Did T McBee have him? Did have him. Just good riddance to that slate. I needed Shamet to play. Not that it made a huge difference, but I really liked that play. I was hoping that he was going to be relatively low owned. Didn't work out that way. At least we get to talk about him today. Sort of. You want to just get into this? We got a lot to talk about, and we have an NFL show behind us.
Yep.
All right, folks, buckle up. We're probably going to move through this one pretty quickly because it's one of those days. Minnesota Timberwolves are 6-point favorites in Detroit, 232 total. Minnesota does have a Q tag on Anthony Edwards. That is relatively important for today. No Towns, no Jordan McLaughlin. Lots of ownership coming into this team. On FanDuel, Edwards, Russell, Gobert, and Anderson are all like 25% owned. Some of those guys are getting the love on the DK end, as is Taurean Prince, who's 3,200, been playing more minutes as of late. Edwards, not as owned. Gobert, more owned. When you look at Minnesota, assuming everybody is just in, they all look good to me because Detroit is awful.
Yeah. Assuming Edwards is in, like, he's going to look good at 9,100, shooting guard, small forward eligible. You know the type of upside that he's giving you, and he's likely to play, 36 minutes, give or take, assuming that this game is competitive. Gobert, 7,100, so that price tag's come up a bit, but if he avoids foul trouble and is playing well, he's playing mid-30s in minutes. He's going to look good. We have him projected for 40% ownership right now, which seems aggressive, but
yeah,
we also have him with a 30% chance of being optimal. He just looks very good in this spot at that salary. D'Angelo Russell playing big minutes, still no Jordan McLaughlin, so he's going to look good at 7,400. Kyle Anderson's fine at 5,400. Just a pretty appealing team to get to. I think the biggest negative I could say about Minnesota is that they are the first game of the night, and there's a very good chance that we're going to have value opening up later. That puts you in a tough position. But other than that, like, they look very, very good here. Pricing looks good. Matchup's great. You mentioned 26% ownership coming into Taurean Prince. Again, that seems like a lot, especially considering this is the first game of the night. But 3,200 for him, he's going to project pretty well.
Now, obviously, if Edwards ends up out, you're giving a bump to Russell. You're giving a bump to a lot of dudes at this point. Taurean Prince's ownership does not seem so crazy at 3,200 at that point. You can give him a couple extra minutes. Who do you think starts for Edwards if he happens to be out? Noel?
Prince. Or
Okay.
Rivers.
Yeah. Woof.
Actually, yeah, I mean, so the reason that I would say not Noel is that they've had a lot of opportunities to start him this year, and they typically haven't. You could make the case that, Anthony Edwards, because he is your primary scorer, like replacing him with Noel would make some sense, but he's also not really even been playing as many minutes lately. Like, we've seen his playing time come down. I don't think that they're particularly high on Jalen Noel, just based on the way we've seen them treat him this year. So I think you would either get the Austin Rivers spot start or you would get Taurean Prince.
Okay.
And
obviously,
I shouldn't even say spot start, because when Rivers starts, he does play big minutes. I said spot start just because he sucks.
Yeah. Obviously, if Edwards ends up out, though, we're bumping a lot of guys for Minnesota. We're freeing up 36 minutes and 28+% usage.
Yeah, it would make D'Angelo Russell look fantastic. It would make Kyle Anderson look better. Anderson, one of those guys that does everything pretty well. So when you take out somebody that is a high usage guy and a relatively high assist guy, Kyle Anderson can just step up more. I wanted to see. I can't imagine we have that many minutes without Edwards and Towns on, but 189 minutes this year for Russell without either of them. Actually only has a 25% usage rate, but he does also have a 35% assist percentage, 1.03 DraftKings points per minute. Kyle Anderson's at just shy of a fantasy point per minute. Kind of surprising that the rates on these guys aren't a little bit higher.
What did you say the usage was?
I just lost it, but I think it was like 25%.
Okay. When I pulled it for Edwards off, Towns off, I got Russell at 27, which makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
198 minutes.
Yeah, I have. Where is he? I have 189 minutes, 25.4.
Interesting. Noel at 26.5% usage with those two guys off. So
I have 24.5.
Interesting. Date filter?
It's this season.
Okay. Yeah, that's always the one where you look at Wowie and it's like, oh, it's since January 1st.
Yeah. Done that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, me too. It's a lot. I don't really think there's anything that we can do right now on the Pistons side. They're on a back-to-back. We got a guy that was chalk yesterday, ruled out, 15 minutes before lock. Bojan didn't play yesterday. Duren didn't play yesterday. Livers didn't play yesterday. I don't know what to do with Isaiah Stewart. I don't think that there's anything that we could really do here to talk about this Pistons team.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the injury report clears some stuff up. I don't know how much it will clear up, but if you get what we thought we were going to get yesterday, so like Bojan out but Stewart in, then I think you're back to Stewart looking good at 5,300. Hayes would look good at 5,800. I'd still like Ivy at 5,300. If Stewart is out again, then you still have a 3K Nerlens Noel that played 16 first half minutes, didn't play much in the second half of a massive blowout loss, but seemed like he was going to be able to play 30, 32 minutes. Like they weren't holding back, and they don't have a backup center if Stewart is out. No. So, I mean, at 3K, he would look like a good value. Again, it comes with the opportunity cost at center. You need like an actual good score from him. You're not going to get away with, like 24 fantasy points or something probably. But there's just so much to talk about here because we don't know Duren's status either. Like, there's like a million different ways this team could look.
And like, let's say everybody's in, Bojan in, Stewart in, Duren in. Like, I think Bojan looks okay. I still think Killian Hayes for 5,800 looks okay, assuming that he's just going to go back to playing big minutes like he was. Right. I'm still happy to get to Isaiah Stewart. I think there are GPP potentials for Jaden Ivey at that price tag. Like, I think the Pistons guys, even at full strength, will still look interesting. It's a solid enough spot in a pace-up spot against Minnesota, but there's an opportunity for them to look like aggressive point per dollar plays if this breaks the right way.
Yeah, agreed. Like there's going to be good plays here no matter what. It's just a matter of how good and who they are. Like you said, if everybody is in, Duren would look fine at 4,800. Stewart would still look decent at 5,300. Hayes and Ivy would both look fine. Bojan's okay. They just would all look like sort of contrarian tournament plays as opposed to guys you're building around. Whereas if you start ruling a bunch of guys out, you're going to get a very popular Detroit team again.
Unlike some of the other teams that we'll talk about, we're going to know the Pistons stuff no matter what. We'll get an injury report at 1:30, and we'll also, this is a 7:00 start. So I think we've already said too much here about the Pistons. The Chicago Bulls are basically in a coin flip matchup against your Washington Wizards. This is a game that's really difficult to talk about. We have no ownership coming into the Bulls right now. I don't expect them to be fully unowned, but we do have a Q tag on DeMar DeRozan, probable tag on Alex Caruso. If DeRozan ends up out, it creates real big trickle-down effects for usage for Levine and for Vooch. They will look so much better at their current price tags. DeRozan's 8,400 on FanDuel. If he plays, I actually like him quite a bit at that salary. If everybody's in for Chicago, then I do find them to be like relatively uninteresting. If DeRozan ends up out, that changes the game considerably.
Yeah, I mean, if DeRozan's out, it makes Vooch and Levine look great. It also, would open up playing time and opportunities for some of the random guys like Kobe White. I would assume Patrick Williams all look better if DeRozan is out, even though they're not very good fantasy options. But Levine and Vooch would both look really good. Levine has finally gotten more expensive. He's 8K now on DraftKings, but still shooting guard, small forward, so easy to get into lineups. Vooch at 8,100, you get the opportunity cost of the center position, but he should have success in this spot. So assuming DeRozan is in, I think Vooch and Levine both look like perfectly fine tournament options. Neither one pulling any ownership right now. That I think has to do with DeRozan's status. But we have Levine 9% to be optimal, Vooch 7%, DeRozan 11%. Like they would all just be reasonable tournament plays, but nothing that you're like pointing to and saying like, oh, this is clearly a piece you're building around. Whereas if DeRozan's out, then I think you are building around those guys.
Yeah, Levine with DeRozan off in games that he and Vooch have both started, 419 minutes, 32% usage rate. You don't see the huge bump for Vooch, but he just hasn't played that many minutes either, 22.5% usage rate when DeRozan is off the floor. You do not see a big usage bump for Kobe White either. Dragic, oddly enough, is the 23% usage guy in this scenario. But if you get Kobe White up to like 24 minutes, even if you were getting like Dragic at 24 minutes, depending on how you think this breaks, those guys are in the low 3K range. We're going to create solid pay down point per dollar options with no DeRozan. Who do you think would start? You think they would go Dosunmu, Caruso, Levine, Williams, Vooch?
Yeah, I was going to say probably Caruso.
Okay. Yeah, but for right now, like, we kind of know how to talk about Chicago, and the linchpin here is DeRozan's status. So there's not much else for us to say. Get ready. That's a theme. It's worse here for Washington, who don't have Bradley Beal, but do have Q tags on Kristaps Porzingis, Daniel Gafford, and Corey Kispert. So 100 and something minutes in their starting lineup. No real ownership coming in here except for Rui at 13%. FanDuel is different. That's because Kyle Kuzma is still incorrectly priced at 7,400. No matter what the status is for any of those three guys, Kyle Kuzma is an exceptional play on FanDuel at 7,400 and can only get better and better and better as you start lopping some of those dudes out. Porzingis is 8,700 power forward center. No matter what happens to these guys, other than Porzingis being out, I'm very interested in him at 8,700, no matter what happens for Gafford or Kispert. The trickle down as the machinations of these guys getting ruled out changes everything for every individual guy. But assuming everybody is in, what do you like for Washington, if anything?
So, I mean, I like those FanDuel prices that you mentioned. Those look great. On DraftKings, I think they're much more difficult to get to. Kuzma at 8,500, Porzingis at 9,600. He does have power forward eligibility now, which is nice, but you're getting them priced about where they should be. Porzingis about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Beal this year. Should play 34 plus if he's able to play. Kuzma, he's at 1.1 without Beal or Porzingis. So if Porzingis were to be out, he would certainly start to look good without just Beal on the floor. Kuzma, I believe, is around the fantasy point per minute. Yeah, 1.09 DraftKings points per minute, 29% usage rate. But again, at 8,500, not really standing out. But you also get, like, if Porzingis and Gafford are in, we saw Washington go back to running a deeper rotation last game. Taj Gibson played 11 minutes. Some of that was garbage time. He wasn't really in the second half rotation. He did get some first half minutes. Jordan Goodwin played a bit. So I think it's likely you get like a 9.5 man rotation if everybody's in. And the result of that is that, Rui got to 28 minutes, which is still fine. But Denny Avdia only played 22, including garbage time. He played like 17 or 18, not including garbage time. It just makes everything riskier. Like right now you have 13% ownership coming into Rui at 4,600. If you guarantee he plays 28 minutes, I get it. But you're also just going to get some games where Avdia steals those minutes and they both play 24 or something. So it just becomes riskier than when they were playing eight man rotations, and you could really count on that playing time for Rui and Avdia.
Unrelated right now. Did you happen to see who won the 888 on DraftKings yesterday?
No.
It would be former World Series of Poker champion Chris Moneymaker.
Oh, wow.
Apparently he's now dipping his toes into the NBA DFS space, but he shipped 100K yesterday. Single bullet. And won a bunch of other shit with that too. But yeah, Chris Moneymaker, welcome to it. Incredible. All right, so again, for this first set of games at 7 o'clock, we're lucky that it's 7 o'clock, but we have no idea what to do with Detroit. In theory, we don't have any idea what to do with Minnesota because the status of Anthony Edwards is huge. The Bulls have DeMar DeRozan hanging in the ether, and 3 starters for the Wizards are questionable. We're going to get all of that information, but there's no telling what the 7 o'clock games look like by the time we get to 7 o'clock. Best I could do for right now. Do you have anything you want to add otherwise for your Wizards?
Nope.
All righty. So schedule for the rest of the day. NFL strategy show coming up next at 11 a.m. We've got some playoff games coming up this weekend. Ben and Laffy are going to be breaking those bad boys down. NHL strategy show will be back at 2 p.m. Adam and I will be back for the deeper dive where we should have a lot more information for you guys. That'll be at 5. You'll get NBA Live Before Lock at 6, and then PGA Live Before Lock at 8 p.m. I do not know what the PGA event is this week, but you should play it and you should watch the show. All righty. Game number 3. Much easier to talk about this one. The Milwaukee Bucks are 2-point favorites in Atlanta, 232 total. Chris Middleton is out, as is Serge Ibaka, which means that we know how to project this Milwaukee rotation. And more importantly, Drew Holiday played 34 minutes on Monday, which means we know how to project Drew Holiday. And his price is still stupid at 7,200, only 24% owned. I could see wanting to get to more Drew Holiday here. I think Giannis, obviously, there's going to be a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of free salary out there, so getting to Giannis should be easy. I think Brook Lopez is probably a little underrepresented at 5,500. I don't mind going that direction. Feel free to go to Connaughton and Allen as you see fit. We've got Pat Connaughton 3,500 at 23% ownership. That feels a little healthy to me, even playing increased minutes right now. But let's start with Jrue Holiday and how awesome he looks.
Yeah, he looks great. The price tag actually came down $200 from last game. The only question mark, going into last game, it was like if he plays 34 minutes, he's going to look really good. He still, I think, ended up having a pretty mediocre game against the Knicks, but better spot here against Atlanta. Played those 34 minutes. Overall this year, 22 games without Middleton and with Giannis, 1.17 DraftKings points per minute. He just looks like a very, very good play. Obviously, the ownership is there, but 7,200 is just a mispricing on Jrue Holiday. Giannis looks great if you can get there. Power forward center on DraftKings. I assume small forward, power forward on FanDuel. So not the most opportunity cost. You can get him at a forward spot where typically there is a little bit less. So he's going to look good. Pat Connaughton right now is value. I get why the ownership's there. He's shooting guard, small forward, so you can play him in 5 different roster spots. He's only 3,500. He's likely to give you around 30 minutes. He's the type of guy that, as we get news throughout the day, his ownership is going to come down just because he's not a great point per minute guy. You're talking around 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. We have him projected for 20.8 DraftKings points. It's just that right now, if the slate started and all of the questionable guys were in, Pat Connaughton would be one of the best values on the slate. Once you start getting those questionable guys ruled out, you start getting shorthanded teams, Pat Connaughton just becomes, like a tournament contrarian play. Same can be said for Grayson Allen at 4K. Pulling 10% ownership right now probably ends up much less than that by the time we get to lock. I'm with you on Brook Lopez. Only 5,500, cheap price tag, good spot. Should play 30 to 32 minutes. I think he's just a strong play. He's just, $500-$600 less expensive than he should be.
Yeah, tough to really want to talk too much about Milwaukee. They are pretty cut and dry when you look at it. Hopefully if I were playing on DraftKings, I would want that Pat Connaughton ownership to stick around because he is not a good per minute guy, and I would just be okay with that beating me. But I expect it to go away by the time we get to lock. On the Atlanta end, we still have no Clint Capella. He's going to be out for 3 games. The Hawks signed Derek Favors to a 10-day. Welcome back to state of Georgia. DeAndre Hunter is the most owned guy at 11% on DraftKings. DeJounte Murray is the most owned guy on FanDuel at 11%. I think Murray's getting underrepresented on DK. He has not been good as of late, like a fantasy point per minute guy, but 6.5% owned on today's slate at 8,200. I continue to like DeJounte Murray basically every day in comparison to ownership. Doesn't generally work out for me, but I do like the price tag. After that, to me, very difficult to sift through Atlanta.
I need more coffee. You started talking about Murray, and I was like, when the hell did we get to the Spurs? But yeah, I mean, the playing time should be there. The salary is appealing at 8,200. Not the most appealing matchup against Milwaukee, but whenever he's this cheap and not getting ownership, he is going to be appealing in tournaments just because of the talent and the playing time. Clearly, he takes a step back playing with Trae Young because Trae Young's just going to do everything on this team, but he's still inexpensive and he's not popular. So, not a core piece for me, but somebody that I do think gives you a lot of upside at pretty low ownership. Anekwo Kongo at 5,700, Trae Young 9,900, pulling 5% ownership. All 3 of those guys just seem like secondary options, but high upside tournament plays. Okongwu was likely to play low to mid 30s. Trae Young's going to play a lot of minutes and look to do everything. 1.3 DraftKings points per minute for Young this year. Okongwu was at 0.93. That comes down a little bit when he plays alongside Trae Young, but none of those guys pulling ownership, which does make them look like interesting tournament plays. The only guy here on DraftKings that is pulling ownership is DeAndre Hunter at 5K. I think that's another one where he projects well. Like, I get why he's getting some ownership. He's likely to play 34 minutes, give or take, and he's only 5K. But once you start getting some, $3,500 wings that are going to play 30 minutes because all their teammates are hurt, then Hunter's ownership is going to come down a bit.
We are on the same page here. Do you have anything else you want to add for Atlanta?
Yeah, one negative from their rotation last game is that they did go back to Frank Kaminsky as the backup center. That's a negative for John Collins, both in terms of playing time and production. So right now we only have Collins pulling 2% ownership at 6,900. Based on the rotation last game, it becomes really difficult to like John Collins. If you told me that he was going to play all of the backup center minutes, I would still think he was decent at 6,900. But with the rotation they went to last game, especially in a spot where they didn't really need to. Like, you're talking about a team that was playing Moses Brown, and I mean, Zubats played a lot of minutes, and then you had Moses Brown as backup center. Like, you didn't need to go to Kaminsky. It makes me think they're going to just go with that rotation now.
Yeah, it's not appealing to see. That's for sure. And maybe they don't go to Kaminsky. Maybe they go to Derek Favors. Who the hell knows? But like, now they even have another option.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought when they added Favors was that I was not going to be able to play John Collins for a while.
Seems like you're going to be right. The New Orleans Pelicans are 10-point dogs in Boston, 229 total. No Brandon Ingram, no Zion Williamson, and Herb Jones is doubtful. So we're missing out on 3 starters here for the Pelicans. We're seeing Najee Marshall, Joe Val, and Dyson Daniels all get to around 15% ownership. Minimal ownership coming into McCollum, minimal ownership coming into Alvarado. Do you think they start Daniels or Alvarado here?
Probably Daniels.
Okay. And I could just see Alvarado closing too. Right. So I don't have a great feel between the two. I think they probably play comparable minutes just in different ways.
Yeah. I know they went Daniels in the second half last game. They had gone to Daniels earlier in the season as well. I think they just like Alvarado in that bench role.
I agree. Daniels also pulling 22% ownership on the FanDuel end. Do you see anything here for the Pels? This is a terrible spot against Boston. There's free playing time out there, but this is not a team filled with really great per minute guys. I think CJ probably looks a little bit better than that $8,700 price tag. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants. If you think Joe Val's playing 28 minutes, he's totally fine. Nance and Joe Val played alongside of each other in their most recent game. That's very important. And if you're going to drop another starter, it's just going to, in my eyes, it's just going to feel a little bit better to play Nance at the 4. If you have to, you start running out of guys to play. So what do you see for New Orleans?
Yeah, so I was going to mention that. I think it was SMP had mentioned in chat that with the Gafford Porzingis front court, I think that Nance and Joe Val would play alongside each other more. And I said I couldn't project it just because they've barely done it this year. But then we saw it, and then now going into the spot against Boston, where you're likely to get Horford and Williams playing alongside each other a bit, and they're shorthanded now, or more shorthanded without Jones. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you do see that, and it's good for both of them. Larry Nance, 4,400 with power forward eligibility, playing 26 minutes last game. He's interesting. Joe Val gets more minutes if they're going to play alongside each other as well. The ownership is there on him at 13%, but that does make me like both of them a bit more. Only 8%, 9% ownership coming into McCollum is interesting. I get that it's a difficult matchup, but if this game's going to be competitive, you assume McCollum's playing well, gives you a massive ceiling without Ingram or Zion on the floor. So I am interested in him in tournaments. 1.27 DraftKings points per minute without them on the floor this year, 31.2% usage rate, 31.1% assist percentage. So I think that there's, the upside on him makes him appealing. 1.18 DraftKings points per minute without those guys for Joe Val this year. Then you get into, the wings where Najee Marshall's a pretty good point per minute guy that should play a lot of minutes, but he's also 5,800 in a tough matchup. Dyson Daniels only 3,100. He's produced 0.77 DraftKings points per minute in 311 minutes without those guys on the floor. He's likely to play mid to upper 20s. So I think that's a reasonable value that, again, probably just kind of gets surpassed later on. But if he's starting at 3,100, there's certainly merit to going to him. Jose Alvarado is just shy of a fantasy point per minute. His salary came down a little bit on DraftKings to 4,400. He's pulling about 8%, so that seems reasonable. It's not a lot of stuff that I'm comfortable with, but I do think that there's a lot of upside here just because of everybody being out. If they do play reasonably well and compete in this game, you're going to get a good player or two from the Pels.
Yeah. The Boston side, a little bit more difficult to talk about. We still have the questionable tag on Marcus Smart. Now, we know how to handle that if he ends up out. We also have a Q tag on Time Lord. They are on a back-to-back. They play again tomorrow. They are in Brooklyn. Seems to me that this would be the spot that you sit Robert Williams and then you play him in the second game. If you're going to be 10-point favorites here, he is not affecting this line in any way. He started on Monday. It didn't really matter from a playing time perspective. I don't think that they're ramping him up anytime soon. Maybe they are. I don't know. No one is getting any ownership for Boston right now, unless it's the FanDuel side. $8,500 Jaylen Brown is in 20% of lineups. $5,800 Marcus Smart, if he's playing, is in 24% of lineups. Al Horford is at 13% ownership at 5K. On the DraftKings side, though, I don't really see much for Boston. And I don't even know if like Robert Williams being out even opens anything up.
Yeah, I mean, if Williams is in, I still think he's kind of interesting just because he played 23 minutes last game. We maybe could have gotten a couple more. He didn't close that game. Grant Williams was playing insanely well, played the final 20 and a half minutes of the game. There's a non-zero chance, I think, that they could have gotten to 25 minutes or so on Williams, just give him a couple minutes at the end. So just the uncertainty there and the lack of ownership makes him kind of interesting if he's in and starting. But other than that, I'm with you. I don't really see much. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, it goes without saying that if they land in a lineup, that's fine. They're both really good, but they're also priced pretty much correctly. Horford is getting really cheap. He's down to 4,600. He is playing 30 plus minutes in most games. He's not the best point per minute guy, but I am interested there just because he's pulling 6% ownership and he's just so inexpensive. But yeah, there's not a lot that stands out from Boston, assuming that, Smart and Williams are in. If Williams is out or Smart is out, that should mean more minutes for Grant Williams. He's 4K. You can't expect the same sort of massive game he had last time out, but you can expect more minutes if either of those guys are out. Similarly, you can expect more minutes from Malcolm Brogdon. He only played 22 last game, but on average, you're going to get around 25, 26. If Smart is out, you're going to get around 22, 23 if he's in. But his price tag has come up a little bit as well.
Yeah, just hard to talk about Boston right now. The Q tag on Smart is obviously the one that really opens things up for going to Brogdon, going to White. Having just more minutes in general out there. Yeah, wow, 36 and a half minutes from Grant Williams. I did not see that from Monday. That's a big time number. Anything else for Boston?
The most actual points on the team outside of Jason Tatum.
Wild. Every once in a while, he just steps in it.
Yeah, and it's always of course, he was 10% owned on that slate too.
Yeah. Guys, PrizePicks, presenting sponsor of this show. There is a link in the description of the video. Click it, head on over to PrizePicks, make a deposit. They will match that deposit up to 100%. So for $100 too. So you put in 75, they're only going to give you 75. But if you take it all the way up to that $100 mark, they will match with 100. You're picking player props, taking over-unders, put together 5 on one card. You could net up to 10x your entry fee. We've got a PrizePicks player prop tool for the NBA. I would highly recommend you guys check that out. Doesn't have to just be NBA, and you can mix and match sports: NBA, NHL, NFL, college basketball, soccer, golf, MMA, Call of Duty, all sorts of different prop options for you on PrizePicks. They've got NBA fantasy scores up right now. Not a lot of them, but enough that Adam and I can touch on a few. Remember, guys, this is FanDuel scoring. How do you feel about over under 49.5 for Jason Tatum?
Would help if I was logged in.
Sure would.
49.5 FanDuel for Jason Tatum.
Yeah. I have 49.5 on the dot.
I think I would lean over, but it's close. We have him at 48.7 in 36 minutes. I'd probably give him another minute. So probably just wouldn't bet it.
Okay. Jaylen Brown, 41.5.
Same thing. We have 40.7 in 34 minutes. I probably just wouldn't take it.
CJ McCollum, 41.5.
I'll take the under there. We have 38.9. Again, I like him in tournaments, but I think from a median standpoint, I'd take the under.
And I'm going to give you one more. This is raw points, not fantasy points here. Drew Holiday, 18.5.
We have 18.52.
Okay, I got 18.7, so not a lot of wiggle room on that one. Guys, that's PrizePicks. Fantastic sponsor. Great deposit match bonus. So go check it out if you can. Game number 5, the Indiana Pacers, 4.5-point dogs in New York, 229 total. Potential to create a little bit of value here. Q tag on Aaron Nesmith, and then Q tag on TJ McConnell. For right now, Andrew Nembhard is the highest owned guy for the Pacers at 14% across both DraftKings and FanDuel. Everybody else is in single digits. I find Indiana to be mostly uninteresting. If you lose Naismith and TJ McConnell, You probably just give Chris Duarte a pretty big chunk of minutes, and then a couple guys get a little bit of a bump. I don't think that there's enough trickle down for these guys to truly matter. And they have the same rotation every single night. So these salaries are sort of where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, and the Nembhard ownership, I think, probably comes down a bit as we get more news. You and I have talked about it before. He is a complete zero when he's playing with Tyrese Halliburton. It's not like, I don't even think it's a talent thing. I think it's just, Halliburton does so much of the same stuff. Nembhard has now started 25 games with Tyrese Halliburton active. He's averaged 29.2 minutes per game. Like, that's obviously appealing at 3,900. 0.67 DraftKings points per minute. He just doesn't need to do anything when Tyrese Halliburton is out there. If McConnell is out, I do think there's a chance Nembhard looks a little bit better. Maybe they would, stagger him with Halliburton a little bit more. We've seen them do that at times anyway. Like last game, actually, in the second half after McConnell left, the second unit was Nembhard, Hield, Mathurin, Brissett, Jalen Smith. So actually, I wouldn't sleep on the McConnell news. I think Nembhard does look better if McConnell is out. If McConnell is in, then I think Nembhard's going a little bit over-owned. If he's out, I think that's probably enough to make up the difference and, make Nembhard actually look pretty good at 3,900. So don't sleep on the McConnell news. Tyrese Halliburton at 9,200, Turner at 7,100, both pulling sub 10% ownership, both have massive ceilings, both are in a pretty unappealing spot against the Knicks, but the type of upside that they give you. Mathurin at 4,500, maybe, giving you around 26 minutes per game, but not overly exciting. There's not a lot that I really like here.
We'll switch it over to the Knicks side, which is also confusing for today. RJ Barrett, Q tag, which certainly matters for a lot of things going on for the Knicks because we have seen no RJ Barrett for the past 6 games, and it has created some very interesting plays. We're still getting Jalen Brunson, 28% owned across both sites. Probably a little high for me, but I don't mind getting there. But Barrett definitely takes a slight bite out of him. Randall feels too expensive if Barrett is coming back. Mitchell Robinson, to me, still looks pretty good, 5,400. I don't expect his minutes to really go anywhere. Nobody ever plays Quentin Grimes. I don't know if, I don't know what else to say about Grimes at this point. I definitely don't want to go to RJ Barrett. Quickly becomes unplayable, I would say, if Barrett comes back. What do you see for the Knicks right now?
So if Barrett is in, I still think you can take shots at Brunson, Randall, Robinson. It certainly muddies things up a bit. We did get Obi Toppin back playing 8 minutes last game as well. All 8 of those minutes did come from Julius Randle. So the question remains, are they going to just play Obi Toppin 8 minutes a game? Or is he going to start taking those minutes back from Julius Randle like he was earlier in the year? Or are they going to play him at center? We didn't see them play him at center at all last game. So that is one thing to keep an eye on. But for now, I would still be expecting 38 to 40 minutes from Julius Randle. I don't think Barrett has an impact on Randle's playing time. I expect those minutes, the power forward minutes, just to be Randle plus Toppin. The bigger question is, does Toppin play 10 minutes instead of 8? But you do see, a little bit of a increase in or decrease in usage for Randle if Barrett's back. He's 10-5. The playing time still makes him look good. The matchup still makes him look good. He would just look a little bit better if Barrett is out. Brunson should play a lot as well. Again, he's just going to look a little bit better if Barrett's out, but you should be still getting a lot of minutes from Jalen Brunson. Good matchup, 8,200. 28% ownership is a lot, but he also still just looks good at that salary. And I don't think Barrett should impact Mitchell Robinson. You're just getting Robinson, Hartenstein, Sims playing the center minutes. 5,400 for Robinson. He's been playing huge minutes, 10% ownership coming into him. That looks fine. So all 3 of those guys, I think, just sort of look a little bit better if Barrett's out, but they're going to look good one way or the other. But I'm with you. If Barrett is out quickly at 6,400, still looks good. He takes a hit in terms of production, like we've talked about. He is playing every minute or basically every minute that Brunson or Randle are not on the floor. So that's good. The problem is just that Brunson and Randle are being staggered. So there's 0 minutes available or almost 0. There were 3 last game where Brunson and Randle are both off the floor. So, and we know that Quickly is very unproductive when they're both out there, but he's just getting enough minutes that at 6,400 in an appealing spot, he's going to look like a good option if Barrett is out, and he's going to look unplayable if Barrett is back because he's priced to play 38 minutes and he will not be doing that.
Anything else you want to touch on from the Knicks?
No, it's just those. It's the main three, and then add in quickly if Barrett's out.
Well, we've done this one for just about every team. The San Antonio Spurs are 14-point dogs in Memphis, 237 total. Keldon Johnson is questionable. Keita Bates-Diop is questionable. We know that there's no Devin Vassell. Whether or not Keldon Johnson plays is massive for this Spurs team. It changes the entire scope. Right now, he's not getting any love on DraftKings at 7K. He's at 17% ownership on FanDuel at 6,700. I will likely be playing a bit of Keldon Johnson if he happens to be in. Similar story for Trey Jones. For right now, though, I think most of San Antonio looks terrible. This is a rough spot.
Yeah, especially if Keldon is in. You're not really getting any ownership coming in here. Keldon Johnson actually leads the way at 7%. Not a very appealing spot. 6,300 for Pirtle certainly gives you a ceiling, but there's a lot of centers you can say that about. Sohan doesn't look as good if Johnson's in. Trey Jones doesn't look as good if Johnson is in. Pretty unappealing team if Keldon Johnson plays.
Now, if Keldon Johnson happens to be out, obviously one of the pieces that matters most here is, does Keita Bates-Diop play or not? But where do you want to go if we don't have Keldon Johnson?
So if we don't have Keldon Johnson, I'll probably get back to some Keita Bates-Diop, which will burn me once again. He started last game, only played 17 minutes. He started the game before that, only played 21. Overall, as a starter this year, he's averaged about 26 minutes per game. You do have, extra or different bodies now. Stanley Johnson in the rotation taking up some minutes, but in large field tournaments, I'd still have some interest in Keita Bates-Diop if he's starting. Romeo Langford should play 28 minutes, give or take. He's not a very good point per minute guy, but he is 4K. Again, not going to be excited about that, but he would look playable if Johnson is out compared to not playable if he's in. Jeremy Sohan at 5K would look better. Josh Richardson at 4,600 would probably be the most appealing piece. Played 25 minutes last game. We've seen him play 29, 30 minutes recently. I think projecting him around 25, 26 minutes makes sense, but he also has point guard and shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings, so he would look solid if Johnson is out. You get a bump in production for Jakob Poeltl if Johnson is out, so he'd look a little bit better. I still don't think that there's anything that looks great if he's out, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. But it's just that they're playing so many guys. Like, even without him last game, you still got a 10-man rotation, full 10-man rotation. Like, 10 guys played at least 15 minutes. Nobody played more than 30. Jeremy Sohan and Jakob Poeltl both got to 30 minutes. Or sorry, Trey Jones both got to 30 minutes. Poeltl played 26. And that was in a competitive game. So you get a bump in production for guys if Johnson is out, but prices have already come up a little bit because of Vassell being out. And as long as you're expecting them to just run this very deep rotation, I still don't think you really end up with priorities.
Well, that's San Antonio. 2 touchdown underdogs against Memphis. The Grizzlies, we could actually talk about. It's very nice, honestly. John Morant is off the injury report. We still have no Brandon Clark. We kind of know how they correct this problem. 12% ownership going to Desmond Bane, which I think you and I are both going to like. 20% going to Xavier Tillman on FanDuel at 3,900, which I can do without at this point in time. He is power forward center.
I was going to say, because that is insane if 20% of the field is giving the center position to Xavier Tillman.
No, power forward center. That ownership is not going to last by the time we get to the end of today. There's just going to be enough value that you don't have to worry about getting the backup center to Steven Adams, but he is interesting because of it. We've had these conversations before. I'm happy to go to Ja. I'm happy to go to Bane. Probably happy enough to go to Steven Adams at 6K. Jaren Jackson is always worth a shot because you never know when he's just going to stack up 8 stocks. I don't see any of these guys as like guys I have to go out of my way to have, because this is just going to probably be a pretty rough game for Memphis' starters. Feels like it's going to be a little light. But Desmond Bane at 7K, the minutes are there now. One of these days, he's just going to get like 34.
Yeah, he's been playing around 30. And that was, keep in mind, those last 2 games were both ends of a back-to-back. And he played 30 minutes in 30 and then 29. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this is the game where you get 33, 34, if it's competitive. Certainly, massive blowout risk here, like you said. But at the same time, there's a good chance at least one of these Memphis guys is putting up a really big game in 3 quarters if it does get out of hand. The Philly game yesterday, perfect example. I had a lot of Embiid. I had a good amount of Harden. So it's frustrating that the Pistons didn't keep up and I didn't get like 100 points from one of them. But still, you got 61 and 3/4 from Harden, you got 55 and 3/4 from Embiid. You can see the same kind of thing here, where Morant still gives you 55, 60 DraftKings points in 3/4, or Jackson goes for 40, or Bane goes for 40. So certainly not just avoiding these guys because of the blowout risk, even though it is very, very, very real. But John Morant, Jackson, Bane all look good, and none of them are pulling a ton of ownership. Bane's the only one in double digits. Jackson, Lofty was talking about his defensive stats this year the other day, just absolutely insane. 5.9 blocks per 100 possessions this year for Jaren Jackson, in addition to 1.8 steals per 100 possessions. Just unbelievably good on the defensive end. He's expensive, and the issue with him is that he's typically only giving you like 26, 27 minutes. Did play 30 last game, which was good to see, but you're never really going to project that. The one spot ownership wise that does stand out to me here, though, is Steven Adams, only pulling 3.5% ownership on DraftKings with no Brandon Clark. I get that there may not be a true closing rotation in this game, but in 4 games without Clark this year, 34, 27, 30, and 28 minutes from Steven Adams. This is not a bad point per minute guy. He's at 1.07 DraftKings points per minute for the season. His rebounding numbers recently have been absolutely insane. I don't know if that's like some sort of a change for Memphis or what, but he's been rebounding at an even more ridiculous clip than normal. I just think he should be getting more ownership here, because if this game does happen to be relatively competitive into the fourth quarter and he avoids foul trouble, you are likely getting 28 to 30 minutes from Steven Adams in a pretty appealing spot.
Anything else you want to touch on here for the Grizzlies?
Also, just sort of as an aside with Adams, not that not these blowout proof or anything, but like if you get the game, like the scariest thing for rostering Memphis, I think, is that you get a Memphis blowout where it's just that the Spurs can't score, as opposed to Memphis scoring every time down. If the Spurs can't score, Steven Adams is grabbing 25 rebounds.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's just going to own the defensive glass.
Right. So, like, he's the one guy here where, like, Morant, Jackson, Bane, they're all in trouble if you just get the game where the Spurs score 30 points in the first half.
Yep.
Steven Adams has a massive double-double at halftime if the Spurs have 30 points in the first half.
Yeah. And that's the way that it's going to happen, too. I don't think that this blowout happens because it's a track meet.
Well, no, but it's like, I don't think the Spurs are going to do well either way, but the Grizzlies could just, like, it's like, it could be 70 to 30 at halftime, or it could be 45 to 30.
Yeah.
50 to 30. If it's 50 to 30 at halftime, you're just in trouble with probably everybody except Steven Adams. If it's 70 to 30 and you're still going to get a third quarter from these guys, chances are one of the main pieces is also doing well.
There's not much we could do for this next one. The Phoenix Suns are 12-point dogs on a back-to-back heading to elevation in Denver. We don't know the status of Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Landry Shamet. I don't even want to bother here. There's literally nothing we could do for Phoenix. We're probably not going to get their injury report till 3:30, unless now is the time that you're about to tell me that it's already out somehow. But can we do anything here? By the way, thanks to the Suns for pulling the Jock Landale, Bismack Biyombo bullshit last night too.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. No, I mean, I have no idea what to do with this team right now.
Yeah, we'll have a better idea at the deeper dive, but given how late that Q tag turned into an out for Shamet, I don't think we're getting anything on him until 8 p.m. tonight. No idea what they're going to,
like, we'll be able to get answers on some other stuff.
Yeah. My guess is that we don't see Chris Paul today. It seems like a really weird spot to bring him back in elevation on the road as giant underdogs. Ayton, I have no idea. At least the Ayton piece is like a really easy fix where it's just centers moving minutes around. Yep. The Shamet piece and the Shamet piece in particular is huge. But one thing, I assume we're all going to Dwayne Washington today if he happens to be the starting point guard.
Yeah. So I do think he's just kind of interesting to talk about, because Monty Williams does not have much faith in this guy.
Sure doesn't.
He did not play closing minutes last game when they had no ball handlers. Like, even like Memphis beat writers were tweeting, like, I think it's pretty fair to question why Dwayne Washington isn't on the floor when the Suns can't get the ball across half court. And there were quotes from the previous game too, where he was basically saying, Monty Williams was basically saying, like, we want Dwayne Washington to be aggressive. We don't want to take that away from him. So we know he's going to make mistakes, but also, like, he needs to stop making so many mistakes. And he'd even mentioned in that previous game that he was going to sub him out, but then he happened to get hot and he left him in for a few minutes. So I do think that, like, if you get Shamet in, I basically, once I like got through projections and everything yesterday, I ended up being lower on Washington than I was on the deeper dive. Then obviously that changed when Shamet got ruled out. But if Shamet is in and you get a starting lineup of Shamet, Bridges, Craig, Saric, Biyombo, I think that Dwayne Washington still has a very, very high ceiling at 4,600. I do also think that playing 24, 25 minutes is probably like where he ends up. Even yesterday in his start, he only played 27 minutes. He's 4,600. Like if he's starting, he's going to look good, but there's still no guarantee he's in the closing lineup. And then if he's coming off the bench, he looks risky as well. So I really just want to pay a lot of attention to the ownership on him. I think that there's a good chance it ends up being higher than I think it should be if Chris Paul is out. But he is also the type of guy where if he's just not getting ownership for some reason, then I would love to go there because of the point per minute production. But I do think that Monty Williams' lack of confidence in him is concerning when you're talking about him as a very popular option.
Denver has all of the same normal guys available here. They should smack Phoenix around, assuming this breaks the right way. Jokic, 15% owned on DraftKings, 5 on FanDuel. No real ownership coming in anywhere. I don't know why Jamal Murray is not getting more ownership. He would be the guy that I would want the most, but I don't see any priorities coming from Denver. Yeah,
I mean, it's Jokic clearly is going to look really good. This is another game. This is a tricky slate. Like you love this. There's been a lot of spots you don't really like. You love the spot for Memphis, but they're 14-point favorites. You like guys on Denver, but they're 13-point favorites. Jokic at 11-6 certainly looks good if you can get there. Once again, though, I think my favorite guy is, in terms of everything, is going to be Jamal Murray. One thing that I had forgotten to mention the other day, and I had seen Malone talking about it, but I just forgot to mention it. He is playing Jamal Murray with the second unit now. That is something that Michael Malone has kind of gone back and forth on in previous years, and it's been really frustrating from a DFS standpoint that he doesn't do it more. But he was saying the other day that Murray, it's Murray's unit with the second unit. He needs to go out there and be aggressive with that unit when he's out there without Jokic. So that is something that should bump Jamal Murray's production as well. Not only are we getting increased playing time from Jamal Murray now, which if you just took his rates overall for the season and make him $6,900 and tell me he's going to play 34 to 36 minutes, he's going to look good. But if he's going to be getting, call it 13, 14 minutes without Nikola Jokic on the floor, he's going to look even better.
I don't have anything else to add here for Denver. They're really easy to talk about today.
Agreed. Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon are both going to look fine too.
Late night hammer, Houston Rockets, 9.5-point dogs in Sacramento, 239 total. Standard issue stuff here for Houston. Everybody that's normally available is we're getting 20% ownership going to Şengün at 6,300. Standard ownership, 10-ish% going to Porter, going to Eric Gordon at 3,700. That value will go away. I'm quite confident. It's just the same thing we always see for Houston. I don't really have anything to add. We know their rotation. We know their minutes. I like Şengün. There's 100 other centers that you can go to.
Yeah. This game's appealing from a track meet and lack of defense standpoint. Again, a double-digit spread makes things kind of risky, but also from like kind of a broader macro view, all these spots that we like are double-digit spreads. So that's another reason why I don't think you should just be shying away from like Bane or Morant or whatever, because you're just going to another guy in a double-digit spread as well, most likely. So that's kind of an interesting, over like macro view of the slate, I think. But Şengün looks good. Porter looks good. I am curious why Jalen Green's pulling half the ownership of Kevin Porter Jr. They look pretty similar to me when you consider that Porter is $600 more expensive. I'm with you on Eric Gordon. That ownership should just go away. It's basically like a Pat Connaughton, a worse Pat Connaughton right now. He's like, 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute. I'm very interested in Jabari Smith at 5,100. He's been playing more recently. He's only pulling 4% ownership with power forward and center eligibility. So the ownership on Jalen Green and Jabari Smith just seems a little bit low to me. And then Şengün and Porter both seem correct and look like very good plays.
All right. On the Sacramento side of this one, much like I just said for Houston, we have the Kings. It's the same lineup that they normally have. They don't really deviate all that much. Some ownership coming into Malik Monk, which I think will lessen as the day goes on. Always want to take your shot. You never know when he's going to get those extra minutes. His minutes are all over the place.
Yeah. And it's kind of dependent on how he's playing too, which is nice.
Yeah. Fox and Sabonis, obviously very playable, more so on FanDuel than they are on DraftKings. You just got better prices, better eligibilities, but I'm just happy to get to pieces of this game. I don't think that anybody individually looks incredible.
I think your boy Keegan Murray looks really interesting.
I don't know. I'm not doing this with you.
He's 4,400. He's 5% owned on DraftKings. He's been playing more minutes recently. Even last game, he played 26 minutes, but didn't play at all in the fourth quarter of what ended up being a massive blowout. He played about 16 minutes in the first half. Like, barring foul trouble, you're typically getting 30 minutes or so from Keegan Murray now. He's cheap. We clearly don't have a ton of value right now, and he's not getting much ownership. So I am just really interested in Keegan Murray at 4,400. I think Barnes and Herter look fine, but their prices are more correct. I just think Murray should be around like 5K or 5,200. Sabonis and Fox, clearly, if you can get there, great. Being center only on DraftKings for Sabonis is problematic, but he is also extremely good. 1.3 DraftKings point per minute guy. And Malik Monk at 4,400, I think, probably should be pulling the most ownership here. Averages around 23 minutes per game, but when he's playing well, he plays more. And whenever you can get cheap scorers, basically, that are going to just get more minutes if they're scoring, it's always appealing, because if they're not scoring, then your team sucks anyway. And if they are scoring, they get those extra minutes. So getting to Malik Monk certainly makes sense.
Bet Pro videos today?
Yes.
Adam will be back for the deeper dive at 5 p.m. We'll have live before lock at 6. So plenty of NBA content coming up, and it's going to be necessary. Lots of stuff waiting for news, and we'll be able to break it down much better in the future. But coming up next, NFL Strategy Show first look for the first round of the playoffs. You get Lofty and Ben. Good luck tonight, everybody. Thank you to PrizePicks. We are out of here. Peace.